Hello, welcome back to everyone that's tuned in to the American Ultra Stock channel. Thank you so much for being here with us. Today, a bit of a different video. We have never done this before, but in the midst of probably one of the most successful weeks for Americans, at least in the Champions League with the new format. And let us know, what do you think about that format? We have a video right here where we're going to be reviewing every American that's been involved in the Champions League, or not involved, but their clubs are there, and give a rating, since you guys love ratings, at the end, and comment a little bit of what their contributions, their club's prospects in the competition are. We're going to go right here following the table, and we have the first one is going to be Diego Kochen. We know he hasn't made a match, but Brayden told me he has made the matchday squad twice. How do you see this for his, here's going to be a little bit short, but how do you see this for his development? Do you think it's encouraging he made the matchday squad? Do you think he might get to play since they are pretty high on the table?
Well, I definitely don't think he's going to get the chance to play, unfortunately. But I think the fact that even though he was injured for a little while, as you guys might remember, right after he got the first USMNT call-up for the Mikey Varas camp, he got hurt. He's out for like a month or so. But the fact that he's made 2 matchday squads already, I think is a really encouraging sign, especially because Barca Athletic, who he's supposed to be playing with, the B team, they don't usually play midweek, which leaves him available for the Champions League games. And the fact that he's in the top 3 goalkeepers, and this was kind of the case last season as well, but I still think it's very encouraging at such a young age, at such a huge club. I mean, they're 3rd in the table. Everyone knows how big Barcelona are. It's encouraging to see. I don't think we can necessarily give him a rating because he's just been along for the ride basically, but I mean, it's still a valuable experience to be in a team with such a winning culture. And I mean, Hansi Flick is building something special there. So when he hopefully eventually gets his chance in a couple of years down the line, I think he'll be ready.
Yeah, and it's about learning. He's making the matchday squad. That may sound like it doesn't mean anything, but hey, looking far back, a goalkeeper with a similar age, Iker Casillas, did that in the Champions League and got the chance at a relevant match later on. I think just the fact that he's been there, like you said, it's pretty encouraging. Since we are in that dire need for a goalkeeper to step up, I'm not going to give him a rating either. We're going to move on right here to a duo that if we combine them both together, maybe we get a full match, but that's no knock on them. We have Reyna and Campbell. On one side, we have a player that's trying to, again, this seems to be the theme of his career, trying to regain the space, get some momentum, beat the injuries. And on the other side, a very, very exciting prospect that we have. Most people probably didn't know him before the season started. We try to highlight him, and he's getting minutes with the main team. I'm pretty impressed with that. How would you see both of them? I think these two you can probably give a rating. Do you think it's fair?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, if you combine them, you have almost a full half of football in the Champions League. Close, but almost. I think it's been very successful for Dortmund just in general. I mean, they're 4th in the table. I think that's a lot better than anyone would have thought. I mean, they're higher in the Champions League than they are in the Bundesliga, which is kind of crazy. But for Reyna, we'll start with him since he's the more high-profile player. He just made his first UCL appearance. It was his only matchday squad as well because, of course, he's been hurt for so long, and comes on against Dinamo Zagreb yesterday, as the video comes out, and in the 61st minute, I don't think he looked bad, honestly. I think he definitely looked like he belonged as he should, but I will say I don't know if he was 100%. It could just be that he's scared and a little bit cautious. I mean, it's really his second game back from injury because he had the Bundesliga one over the weekend, but I think it is kind of notable just how I think a little passive maybe he was. I don't think he was necessarily putting 100% into everything, which isn't necessarily a bad thing given his injury history. I have faith that he'll be back to that relatively soon, but I mean, hopefully more things to come. And I think while we're on the topic, since Reyna hasn't had a lot to talk about, if you guys want to see a video like this again after the entire group stage is done, please let us know because we'll be more than happy to make that as well. And now on to Cole Campbell. He's actually made 3 matchday squad appearances, only played in 1 game, made his Champions League debut against Sturm Graz. He came on in the 77th minute, and I think the really notable thing about this is they were actually drawing 0-0 that in this game when he came on, which I think just shows tremendous trust. It's one thing to give him a cameo when they're up 4-0 or something against a bad team, or I don't think he was with the first team yet, but if you go back to that game against Celtic that they ended up winning 7-1, a game like that, I mean, it's fine to give a kid a cameo, but in a game where they're drawing against a team that they should be beating, it's a crucial points for them. He comes on. He didn't really make an impact in the goal, but they did score after he came on. They ended up winning the game. Not that he really had much to do in the game. I think he had one touch or two maybe, but I think it's still notable that for such a young age, he's pushed already into the first team squad. Took advantage of some injuries for Dortmund, made his Champions League debut, and I'm sure there's more to come.
Yeah, and the rating for both of them, do you think there is a way to rate, or you pass it on for now?
Oh, man, I don't even know if we can rate Reyna just because it's out of his control, his injuries. I mean, I guess just like an average 5. I'm going to give Campbell, like, compared to expectations, I think it's like a 7, or just because the fact that he even made his Champions League debut this season, I don't think a lot of people would have expected it. So especially at such an important point. So I think it's pretty admirable.
Yeah, based on the rise, I'll give him a 7 too. I didn't expect him to get this amount of involvement early on. It's so early on in his career, so that's very encouraging for Reyna. Yeah, I won't give him a rating. I think 5. Hasn't done anything wrong. Hopefully he catches on and gets rid of these injuries. I know it's tough, but he has to step it up at some point. Now we're going to move on to the next player. Again, injuries. Sadly, it is the theme of the USMNT, but he was catching a little bit of fire at one point, and I'm happy to see that Monaco are qualifying automatically as of now to the round of 16. They are in 8th place. It's Folarin Balogun still out with that dislocated shoulder injury, a bit of a weird one. It's tough because it affects your movement, but it definitely won't affect or hinder his speed or anything in the technical side, so hopefully he should be back on the side. While I pass it on to you, I'd like to ask if you can give a rating, and do you think that he gets back on the side as a starter?
Yeah, that's a tough one because, like you said, Monaco are having a good season. They're in 8th, the final automatic spot to qualify them through with a bye. He actually did come back today. It was his first game back on the bench. He did come off. He made a substitute appearance. Didn't really do too much, but I mean that's kind of to be expected. It's his first game back from injury. I'm not sure. I would hope he becomes a starter again, just due to the price tag that they paid for him last summer or 2 summers ago, and of course the expectations that we have on him as USMNT fans. But I think for now, maybe a couple appearances off the bench to try to regain some form and then get back in the starting lineup. I think it is notable that most of his form, at least all of his goals, were in Liga, not the Champions League, so the rating is going to have to be a little bit lower. But I will say when he came off the bench against Barcelona in their first game, it was a pretty positive 20-minute cameo. He actually did win a penalty that was reversed by VAR, but he still kind of won it. I mean, it was kind of a dive, to be honest, but he did his best and got in a decent opportunity for a chance as well. The really main one is against Dinamo Zagreb. He came on at halftime. Honestly, he didn't really do much in the game, but he won a crucial penalty in the 90th minute. This one actually stood, and it was converted by Zakaria to earn a huge point for Monaco. I mean, without that point, obviously they wouldn't be in the automatic spots, and they were down 2-0 in that game, drawing back 2-2, a big result, and he played a big part in it. So I don't know if I can give him much of a high rating just because he did miss 2 months or so with an injury, and that kind of impacts his performances so far. He hasn't started yet in a Champions League game this season, only 93 total minutes. So I'm going to give him a 4. This might seem harsh, but I think in terms of the minutes he's played, it'd probably be like a 2 or a 3. But in terms of the impact, it boosts it up a little bit.
Yeah, I will say, well, first of all, sadly, I don't think Monaco are going to hold up that 8th spot. I think it's very tough for them, especially with the latest. I didn't watch the game today. Sadly, didn't get the opportunity to do so, but drop points right there. Huge missed opportunity, I believe, especially looking at where they are in the table. But hey, let's see and hope that Balogun gets back on the side. I think he might find it a little bit tough, but I think he will only start getting some form in late December, January, or when those games start to pile up, and hopefully gets more space in the squad because of rotation, reclaim that starting spot for him. Sadly, it hasn't gone to plan so far, but moving on right here to a guy that has definitely gone to plan. I mean, he is, you use that word quite a bit. He is inevitable. Captain American Pulisic, who has his own show coming out now too, out of nowhere. But yes, amazing season by him. 5 games, 3 goals, 1 assist, and an assist against Real Madrid. He tends to do well against them. And he also has Musah alongside him, who had, in the eyes of some, a really good match against Real Madrid. Milan up there, 16th. Maybe they can try to contest for that 8th spot. It's been a little rough for them. these ones, I think we can definitely give a rating with a concise one. How would you grade both of the guys at Milan?
Yeah, unfortunately, it hasn't really been a good season at Milan domestically or in the Champions League. But honestly, looking at some of the teams that they're above in the table, I mean, they beat Real Madrid. They're above Real Madrid. So I guess if you look at it from that aspect, it's been positive. I'll start with the better of the two, of course, Pulisic. He started all 5 games, played just over 400 minutes. Of course, like you mentioned, 3 goals, 1 assist. The game against Leverkusen was the only one that which he did not have a goal contribution. And even in that, I think he was one of the only decent players for Milan in a game where, in all honesty, they were kind of played off the pitch a little bit by Leverkusen. Even in the game against Liverpool, when, again, they were kind of dominated, especially in the second half, it was a very good goal. Unfortunately, it was so early that it ended up not making a difference because Liverpool just came back and scored 3 unanswered. But it was a good run. He picked up the ball pretty deep into the opposing half and ran just pretty much uncontested. Good finish. The Olympico against Club Brugge, incredible, honestly. I have no words. I mean, a little bit lucky by the goalkeeper, but to score a goal of that quality, it just, I think, speaks volumes to the form that he's in. Great performance as well. And then, like you said, the assist against Real Madrid, a huge moment for Milan. They were really struggling, and to get a 3-1 win, especially after dropping your first 2 games in the Champions League, I think is massive against one of the biggest clubs in the world. And of course, the goal against Slovan Bratislava this current match day, another solid goal from Pulisic. So I mean, he's just doing fantastically. He's tied for 4th as well in the Champions League for chances created, got 13. So even you can look at, okay, he's scoring goals, getting assists. Is he really impacting the game? In all aspects, he's creating chances for his teammates, doing so well, winning dribbles, even winning some tackles at times. He's doing everything really for Milan. I think he's been their most consistent player all season in the Champions League or not. I'm going to give him a 9 out of 10. I'd be higher if Milan were doing better as a whole. It seems kind of unfair to put that on him, but I mean, it is part of a team, and we'd like him to be doing better from that aspect. But other than that, it's been pretty flawless. As for Musah, honestly, I'll give him a 6 because he hasn't really played that much, only 1 start, but in the 1 start that he made against Real Madrid, no less, at the Santiago Bernabeu, he was great. I thought he played kind of a hybrid center mid right back role, and I thought he did really well, honestly. Contained Vinicius Jr. at times, and just overall just looked very solid and looked like he belonged, which honestly I don't know if I would have expected going into that match. So huge props to him for that. Maybe he gets more chances later on, maybe he doesn't, who knows, but in the chance that he did get, he took it.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I think for Pulisic, I was never a big fan of Fonseca being appointed a while back. I thought it wasn't a good appointment. I feel like for them playing the terrorism ball of Pioli is a little bit more beneficial. We're seeing they're struggling. It's a tough season. Quite frankly, I think he should stay there. Some people say he should move on, but if you look at the Champions League, since we're talking about it, he has always shined. So he's kind of being a leader there, and I like that he's kind of taking that role. Maybe not being vocal. We know the type of personality he has, but altogether for him individually, I would give him a 7. He has shown up at every match. I think he has been really good so far. And for Musah, he was good against Real Madrid. Had one moment where Madrid could have capitalized on a small mistake that he did, but really good cameo. And I think that may be the reason why Poch sees him as more of a wide player. I feel like his physicality is right now at the stage that he is in his development as a player, he should be playing more there as opposed to centrally. I think he can be quite error prone. I'll give him a 5.5, because I think it's fair. He didn't do anything bad, but I don't think did much really to, as we see, gain any more opportunities as a starter. But promising nonetheless, I think, for Musah. And now moving on right here to the trio. Some people think it's just a duo. Some people might forget, but we do have Ledezma there, joined by Pepi and Tillman, riding probably the highest of highs. I know that Pepi had that big moment last year, but I think one of the most memorable matches that they had as a trio, let's say, the Americans repping at PSV. Ernie Stewart, props to you for bringing the Americans there. How do you grade each and every single one of them?
Yeah, I think let's get the bad out of the way so we can focus on the good. Richy Ledezma, unfortunately, I mean, some people I think overreacted to his start to the season against a bunch of lower tier Eredivisie teams. He had some decent performances, but I mean, he he's made 4 appearances, 1 start, 105 total minutes. His start was actually in their first UCL game because, of course, Rick Karsdorp, the right back that they signed, wasn't healthy yet. So he got the start against Juventus and looked completely out of place. Honestly, I can't sugarcoat it. He looked like one of the only players on the pitch that did not belong. He looked lost, and I can't really blame him. I mean, to be honest, he's playing out of position at right back in a stage that he hasn't really played much before. But I mean, he did get beat directly for the first goal by Kenan Yildiz, the Turkish wonder kid. And I mean, outside of that, he just wasn't really good in general. Yildiz kind of owns him the whole game. And then I think it really is a testament to how poor that game was, that he only has 19 total minutes outside of that game in the Champions League this season. Not much to really judge. He did get a yellow card against PSG, which I guess is the only really notable thing that he did in any of those other games. I'm going to give him 2, honestly. It might seem a little bit harsh. To me, these aren't really match ratings. It's more of like, I don't know. It's son of a different scale for me. I think if it was a match rating, so it might be a little higher, but I'll give him a 2 out of 10. Not really anything positive there. But speaking of positives, Ricardo Pepi, incredible form he's in right now. The fact that he's only played 64 minutes in the Champions League this season is infuriating to me. I don't understand why they continue to stick with Luuk de Jong. I think Peter Bosz is just too stubborn, honestly, and hopefully he changes his ways soon, because PSV are 18th right now. I think they could be a little bit higher, especially in the next couple match days if Pepi gets the starting spot. He came on at halftime today against Shakhtar Donetsk, and I mean, those 45 minutes, outside of that, he played 13 against Juve, 1 against Sporting, 5 against Girona, didn't play against PSG. Kind of disgraceful, but when he was called upon, he delivered, scoring the winner. Of course, unbelievable scenes in Eindhoven in the 95th minute at the death to rescue them from the depths of being down 2-0. They end up winning 3-2. Huge win. I think without that result, they'd probably be outside of the top 24, which would be really detrimental to their hopes of qualifying. And I mean, he continues to deliver for club, for country, league, Champions League. Doesn't matter what competition, who he's playing for. He always scores goals, needs more minutes. And now on to the best of the best. Oh, I'll give Pepi a rating. I'll give him a 6.5. He needs to play more minutes if it was to be higher. But Malik Tillman, I think he might get the best rating, honestly, of anyone. Maybe Pulisic, but despite PSV's struggles in some games, I mean, he's played every single minute in the Champions League so far, 3 goals and 2 assists. He's actually first in the entire competition in chances created with 18, 2 more than whoever's in second, which is, I think, honestly, an incredible stat to have an American leading that. 7th overall in FOTMOB rating as well, whatever you want to read into that. I mean, we know app ratings are kind of unreliable sometimes, but I guess it's a nice thing to add on there as well. So at least the apps like him, I guess. But I mean, we saw, of course, what he did against Shakhtar Donetsk, that cheeky little free kick that somehow snuck in to kickstart the comeback, and then absolutely brilliant goal from outside the box to make it 2-2. So incredible performance there. And then the man of the match as well against Girona, the goal and 2 assists was also really good. I will say, outside of those 2 games, it's not that he's been bad, but he hasn't been necessarily to the same level of threat. And you can make the argument that Girona, Shakhtar Donetsk, it's not the highest quality of opponents, but it's still the biggest of stages in the Champions League. I'm going to give him an 8. I think is pretty fair for Malik Tillman, but overall the PSV boys are pretty much delivering.
Yeah, it's interesting they give Pepi a 6.5. I don't know. I feel like I have maybe a slightly different criteria right here. I think that when given the chance and looking at his track record for them, way back when he said that he came out, him and his agent, saying that he needed more minutes, I thought that was pretty silly of him. But delivering these types of performances, the chances that Posh keeps giving De Jong as opposed to him, it makes me question whether it was the right thing. Maybe it was the right thing, because now he's delivering, again, high pressure moments, doing really well with what he's given. And I think that, like you said on the last video, every goal that he scores, the camera goes into De Jong. I think that he's making himself more, well, all the fans are aware of him, but I think that he's making a big case for him to start. And maybe this type of performance in the competition like this, with a lot of eyes on it, gets him a move to a better club if he doesn't get the time that he deserves, I believe. So I'll give him a 7. I feel like he has maximized with what he has been given. And Tillman, I think an 8 is fair as well. What a match. I think single-handedly one of the best matches I've seen from an American at the Champions League. I think that's fair. Again, look at the competition. Yeah, Shakhtar aren't the greatest, but they have done quite a few. They have had quite a few good runs in the years in their history in the Champions League. So, considering all things together, I think for Tillman, I'll give him an 8. And Ledezma, I feel bad for the guy, but I'll give him a 4. It was more out of necessity that he got his opportunity, and he didn't really make a strong case for him being included there. I think he would likely be on the move at some point. Can't really hang around and just be on the bench long term. So we're going to move on right here to the guys at Juventus. Quite surprising to some that they are this far down below the table. And just before I say we move on to them, like you said on the next matches, I think that PSV can get 3 wins out of 4. So maybe that would push them to an automatic qualification. But Juve right here, 19th on the table. We have Weston and Tim Weah, both of them having fairly good seasons in the Champions League. The story hasn't been as attractive numbers-wise, but I think that they have both been doing well. How do you see both of them and the ratings?
Yeah, I'll start with Weah because there's not as much to rate for him. He's made 4 appearances, but only 1 start, and that actually came in this current match day against Aston Villa. It was I don't want to say boring necessarily, but a 0-0 draw. Honestly, it would have been boring if not for that drama at the end where Villa thought they scored in the 93rd minute and then it was cancelled by VAR. But really not too much of a sample size for Tim Weah because, of course, he did have that injury that kind of limited him a little bit on and off. But I think in the start today, he didn't really get much service, honestly. He was playing as a striker, which I know he's played in the past. He played kind of at the youth level, and I see the skill set, but if you're not getting him the ball, then it's kind of useless, and I feel like he didn't touch the ball as much as I would have liked. Now, granted, I was also trying to watch PSV at the same time, so, I mean, I think it was a little bit conflicted there, but from what I saw, at least, he didn't get involved enough from what I've seen. I'm just going to give him 4. I think I'm gonna give him a 4 overall. I know it seems harsh because if you give him a 4 for a match, it seems like he played bad, but I feel like this is a different scale. This is more of what they've accomplished, and I just feel like he hasn't really accomplished too much. So I'm just gonna give him a 4 out of 10 here. And for McKennie, I think he's been very solid. Started 3 of the games, 240 minutes. He scored in the first game actually against PSV in the American battle in the Champions League, and I mean, it did fall to him a little bit, fortunately, but it was still a good finish from where he was. It's nice to see him back on the score sheet, especially since that was really early in the season where he was still being doubted by a lot of Juve fans, and it looked like he may be a little bit out of the project, resigned to more of a squad player. But, I mean, he got the start and took his opportunity. And then as well against Leipzig, he had a very good match, and I mean, the most important moment, of course, the huge tackle that he had that ended up leading back to their goal. An incredible match, by the way. They went down to 10 men and then ended up coming back from down 2-1, winning 3-2. Great game for Juventus. It's a shame they're only 19th in the table because I think, like you said, a lot of people thought they'd be a little bit higher. Outside of that, I will admit he wasn't great in his start against Stuttgart. Only played, I think, 55 minutes in that game. Got subbed off kind of early. Against Lille, he only played about 20 off the bench, and he was injured for the Villa game. So outside of those 2 games, not much to judge on, but I think he was very solid in those 2. So I'm going to give him a 6 so far. I think he's been very solid.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I was going to give Weah a 5. I don't think he has had a breakthrough in the Champions League so far. But I will say, in the few minutes that he got prior to, well, I think today was his first start, but I thought that in the few minutes he did well, particularly against Lille, if I recall. I think that's the match that probably caught Motta's attention to give him a start the next match in the Serie A, and then he did well there, and we know his season has been on an upwards trajectory. I'll give him a 5 because of the momentum that he carried to the league, and now he's starting, so I think that he is getting more space, carving himself a spot in the squad. For Weston, I'll give him a 6.5. It's tough because the rest of the squad is not really contributing, but then again, these guys are part of the squad, so maybe there's that to look at, but I don't think that he has done much wrong. Again, that tackle was amazing piece of play, and not just the tackle. He has had good performances. It's just a little bit messy for these Italian clubs at the moment. Maybe tactics need to be revamped in Italy, but they really should be a little bit higher. But now we're going to move on to the next club right here. I think it might be the first one. All of these clubs it's nice to see that most of our players, all of our players are right there in and the clubs that are fighting for a spot for the next round. I know 24 qualified basically, but we have Trusty and CCV. Don't want to be too harsh right here, but that was absolutely clownery by CCV today. I just have to put that out there. I'm sorry, it's absolutely unacceptable. This is why I think people should tune in to Celtic matches in the Champions League, regardless of the opposition. This is high stakes, and look what happens. But regardless, moving on right here to your opinion on these two guys. They are the partnership of the most successful club in Scotland. They slap up clubs left and right every week up there, and then Champions League comes around. How do you see them? And do you think that Celtic's going to have a shot at making it to the round of 32?
Well, okay, let's start with the positives. The positives from a Celtic perspective is that they're actually doing a little bit better than usual. I feel like usually in the Champions League, they kind of just get slapped up, like you said. They get slapped up by everybody. They seem like they're out of the depth, and it definitely seemed like it was going to be that when they lost 7-1 to Dortmund in the second match day. But outside of that, I mean, if you take away that result, they're winless. Or sorry, undefeated, not winless. The 2 wins, 2 draws, including a win against Leipzig, who, yeah, they're 34th in the table. They've lost all 5 games, but I mean, we know how good Leipzig can be. I mean, they're 3rd in the Bundesliga right now. There's still a lot of quality in the side, and I think getting a clean sheet on the road at Atalanta as well, who are actually up in 5th. I think that's pretty impressive, and then beating Slovan Bratislava, and then as well as getting the draw today, or this match day, against Club Brugge, despite the catastrophic mistake from CCV. I think all things considered, it's been a lot better than usual from Celtic, and they're above Real Madrid, so that's a big positive as well. I think Trusty's been pretty solid, to be honest. Outside of the Dortmund game, he was very bad in that game. That was his first start. It looked like it could be off to a bad era there, but I think he was great in the clean sheet against Atalanta and pretty solid against Leipzig and Club Brugge. So honestly, I think the Dortmund game puts him at like a 1, but then we'll raise him up a little bit because of the other ones. Averages out at like a 4.5, a 5. I think overall on the whole, he's been pretty solid. CCV is going to get rated a -1 million because he is just absolutely atrocious. I cannot believe anyone ever thought this guy was good, honestly. If you guys have been following the channel for a while, you guys probably know I've been a CCV hater since day one. Ever since I watched him at Spurs, I thought he was the worst center back I've ever seen, and he continues to prove me right on the biggest stage for the USMNT. He's consistently the worst player on the pitch whenever he plays, even if Miles Robinson is there, which is saying a lot because everyone hates Miles Robinson, I mean, myself included, based on the performances, but even CCV is worse than him, and in the Champions League, he always seems to cost them in the biggest of moments. You guys might remember last year, he came back against Lazio, came off the bench, and lost them the game. Well, he basically lost them points here against Club Brugge with one of the worst own goals I've seen in a long time. I don't know how you can not see where your goalkeeper is. Just pass it back to your own net without looking to see if anyone's there. It's something I would expect out of a 5-year-old, honestly, and that might be harsh on 5-year-olds. So I hope we never call him up again. Honestly, it might seem a little harsh, but just move on to other players. I mean, there's another center back who we just talked about who plays at the same club that's putting in better performances despite being new to the team. Just call him up instead.
I think he's going to inevitably be called up. He's going to inevitably cost us at a match, and somehow, inevitably, people still try to defend and try to find reasons to justify putting him in there. I think that CCV, I said it once in one group chat and on Reddit, that he's an MLS player masked by playing in Europe. That's basically what it is. Look at the way he plays, the exact skill set and player and build, everything. Put him playing for LA Galaxy. You wouldn't say this guy deserves to go to Europe. That's how I see him. For Trusty, honestly, shocking match against Dortmund. I'll give him a bit of a pass. First match playing in the Champions League, big jump, especially since he's used to playing against farmers every week. Honestly, what do they do in Scotland? Farm and drink. That's all they do. And then they show up to play against Celtic and get slapped around. So it's a bit of a difference in levels. So I think that he improved. I still think he's very shaky at times, contrary to his name. But I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I'll give him a 6 for now. I thought that today he looked pretty decent against Bruges. Again, not the best of competition of oppositions, but again, every single point counts, especially on this no format. And CCV sadly cost him huge points right here on what should have been a win. And I think there is no excuses. If anyone's trying to justify, is watching this far and wants to justify that for me in the comments, have fun. I'll try to comment with you because I don't think that that's justifiable. Like I said, if it was my brother doing that, I'll try to find a way to blame the goalkeeper. But since he's not, I'll just be realistic. Horrible stuff. And that I'll give him a 0. Honestly, I think that's a fair rating. Moving on right here, talking about center backs. Some people might have thought, oh, this is the end, but we have Anrie Chase. Yes, we know he is not American, or he's not committed to the USMNT, but he is eligible. It's not getting any love from Japan, from Japanese fans. We see all the camaraderie and welcoming of spamming flags that the Americans do so well on Instagram. And I think that maybe he's one of the guys that should get a look. He got a match in the Champions League. Stuttgart, I don't know. Well, it was always going to be tough to keep up what they did last season. But how do you grade his performance in the Champions League so far?
Listen, Anrie Chase, all I'm saying is that all of the Americans who have committed to the USMNT are currently inside the top 24 and going through to the next round as it stands. You, the only American who has not committed to the USMNT, are not. All I'm saying, that's all I'm saying. Just commit to the USMNT. 2 of your last 3 games are very winnable. If you just commit your future to Pochettino, to our great country, you'll win those 2 games, probably lose to PSG anyway, and still make it through. So just consider the offer if you're watching this, Anrie, somehow. But in all seriousness, I think, honestly, considering what we expected from him before the season, it's been a huge success. I mean, he wasn't even really a first-team player that much. He was kind of on the fringes between the first and the second team before the season started. He's made 4 Champions League appearances, including, I think, against Real Madrid, actually, which is incredible, I think, to say. Let me fact check that actually real quick. I think, yeah, he did. I think that's incredible. The fact that he got almost 30 minutes against Real Madrid at the Bernabeu, it says a lot. And he even got a start as well against Atalanta. I mean, I think some people say that he only got in this position due to injuries, but while that may be true, he's running with his opportunity. And the fact that he's starting in Champions League games, I think, shows the commitment that the club have to him. And I think he's really hasn't been out of place too much. I mean, not necessarily stellar performances, but nothing too bad that you can then pick and choose and say that he's not at the level. So I'm just going to give him, I think an average 5 is fair, but -1 point for not committing to the USMNT yet. So I'll give him a 4.
I will say he definitely needs to commit to the USMNT. Like you said, look, they lost to Red Star. Doesn't even sound like a club. I know they are a historic club out of Serbia, but I don't think they're going to progress to the next round of the competition. I think he's a player that we should try to recruit. I know that Poch said he's not going to beg anyone and we shouldn't be desperate. I know he has a lot to prove still, but we were talking about CCV. So is there really an argument for not trying to call this guy up? I mean, I'll give him right here a 4. It looked a little shaky against Atalanta, but Atalanta are a very good side. I've always rated them throughout the years. They have an identity, and it's tough to beat them. But that wraps it up. I would like to ask you guys, what do you think about this video idea, the format? Would you like us to do a full recap, like Braden said, at the end of the league stage, whatever you call it right now? So hopefully, good luck to all of the Americans. Hopefully they all make it through, as much of them as possible, automatically to the round of 16, but we'll be cheering them on. Make sure to leave a comment, share, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.